How's it going, everyone? Thank you for clicking on this video. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an intro. What you guys are about to watch is an interview that I did with Nicholas Slyster, who is running for the House of Representatives in Virginia's 2nd District, which happens to be the district that I live in. So I wanted to talk to him, find out more about him, see what he was all about, since if he wins his election, he'll be representing me. For the first 5 minutes of our conversation, the audio was messed up, but luckily the live chat told me and I was able to fix it. So I just wanted to quickly fill you in on what you're gonna miss because there's no audio. Basically, the only part of the interview that I had to cut out because the audio was the introduction, so I could just introduce him myself. Like I said, he is running for the House of Representatives in Virginia's 2nd District, which is the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, where all the naval bases are. So the population down here is very heavily veteran, so you'll hear us talk a little bit about that sort of thing. Nicholas is not a veteran himself, but he's a military spouse. His husband is active duty Army, which you'll hear us discuss that little bit of a perspective difference also in this interview. Also, if you end up liking what Nicholas has to say, I'm going to leave his campaign website in the description. You can head over there and donate to him or read more about his policies, whatever floats your boat. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So on with the interview. So yes, like I said, your answer to that perfectly leads me to the next question I was going to ask anyway. So the last 4 people to sit in the seat you're running for have been former military. They've been veterans. You are not, but you are married to someone. Is your husband still active now? I assume you moved here because he got orders down here, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So
So still active.
yeah. So you are not former military yourself, but you are a military spouse. Do you think that having that sort of still connected, very much still connected to the military world, but slightly more outside than the average person that would sit this seat, do you think that that will be an asset to you, kind of give you a perspective on things that you can do to help the veteran community that maybe someone else wouldn't see?
The answer to that is absolutely, because as a military spouse, we get an amazing seat to see both sides of our communities. We get to see our military side, and we get to see how policy impacts them. But we also, our lives, most of us who military spouses work in the private sector. So we are part of the community in that portion of, outside of the government. So we see how policy impacts the working families that we work with each and every day and the community that we spend time in, regardless of if, we have part-time jobs or full-time jobs. We also, take the responsibility of that. And for me, I can't speak for the entire military spouse community, but for me, I see it as an honor to be able to see both sides of that. I get to experience both sides for better or worse, because if my company decides to have layoffs, I'm impacted by that. Luckily, I have a spouse who's not going to be impacted by layoffs because our government doesn't do layoffs. They have recently started terminating people, I believe unlawfully, with Doge. But as far as me, I get to see the impacts in the real world. I've experienced the real world impacts on the side of our community who help support our military people here in the district. So our small businesses, our moms, our dads, our community members, those who stand up and speak up. And so that is an honor for me to be able to do both sides of that and see that.
Nice. So part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is because I feel like, well, for one, I'm always going to want to, if I get the chance to interview someone running for office, I'm always going to want to. But you specifically, is for one, you're running for the seat in my district. I live in Virginia Beach, so
okay.
There's a connection there. If if assuming you win, you'd be representing me.
Yes.
And then secondarily, up until very recently, if you go back and look at my YouTube channel or my TikTok, right when I started posting is actually when I got out of the Navy.
Okay.
So up until very recently, a couple months ago, I was active duty military, lower enlisted, right? So a lot of the problems that you've identified, I'm well versed. I understand what the problems are for, our lower enlisted active duty people. What is something that you have seen from your perspective as a military spouse, like a specific thing that maybe us active duty people don't see. You know, I'm sure as a military spouse, you hear the complaints, you hear the you know, the groans and the moans, from you know, from the things that we don't like as you know, as active duty military. What is there something that you've seen that you think is could use some improvement? You're like, actually, you know, you never talk about it, but that's bad. Like, you know, that system doesn't really work properly. That's not so great. But you don't. That's not what you complain about, because, you know, we obviously we have our complaints. You know, we don't get paid enough. You know, BAH is too low. What, you know, we have our complaints. But you know, what's something that you see? You're like, you never talk about that, but that sucks, and that should be fixed.
Um, and I think it does get talked about. But before I get into that, thank you for your service. Glad to be in the district here, and obviously at some point we'll need to grab coffee. But on the other side of that, right? And I think, and it's not as much here as it is other places that I've heard these complaints, and it's our military health system, as far as not necessarily getting to see the doctor, it's after the doctor. So
Yeah.
spending hours at the pharmacy.
Oh yeah.
Most people don't have to go spend hours at a pharmacy. Our service members spend hours at the pharmacy, hours at the lab, sitting there waiting, even if they had an appointment. So I think that is one thing. There's ways that we can fix that, and I think that's something that will improve morale, but also improve the level of service that we provide our service members. And I'm sure there's many complaints on it. When we were stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord up outside of Tacoma, Washington, and that was the biggest complaint there. Here, I haven't seen that as much.
It exists. It exists.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I go up to Portsmouth
Yeah.
so that's where we go, is the Portsmouth Hospital up there. So it's not as long of a wait as, you know, and I'm sure that, I mean, we have, what is it, almost 20 installations in this area.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, so I'm sure the other clinics and hospitals have those issues.
Yeah.
And I think also, and I'm so glad they changed it, but the DoD dependent ID cards, those were a big issue, because they either fell apart because they were just laminated pieces of paper.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they finally changed that, and I think that process as well, our ID card process, can definitely see some improvement. And again, I'm sure there are complaints. I haven't heard as many out here as I have in other locations, and I'm sure that we still have those pinch points. And I think those are things, they're small things, but they make a big improvement, and they help build morale. And I think that's something that we can do.
And you know, you
also,
go
ahead. Oh, I was going to say, also updating our bases for MWR, or, you know, making sure our service members don't have just a theater or a bowling alley to go to. We're moving into the 21st century. There's a whole bunch of other things that we can do rather than just a bowling alley and a theater.
Yeah, you know what? While I have you here, assuming you win in November, in next November, which I'll be voting for you, all right? Well, we'll talk about that more in a second. But oh my God! So my wife and I love tennis, right? We both play tennis. We play together a lot. There's tons of naval bases around here. Obviously, we both know that, and most of them, the bulk of them, actually have tennis courts. But what all of them have in common is that they're either horrific, like the cracks everywhere, huge cracks where, like, you can't play on this. You're going to be hitting the ball into cracks. Or we like to go play at night because, you know, summers here, you're feeling it right now. Summers here get ridiculously hot. We like to go play at night, and none of them, except for Little Creek, none of them have working lights. And so I that's, you brought it up. I didn't even think about it, but that's one of those things that I complain about all the time. But you just kind of don't think, and this touches on what I was gonna say. There are a lot of things, just like you brought up with the, you know, having to wait forever for your prescription. Like, you know, I have ADHD, so when I go to pick up my Adderall, I'm sitting, you know, when, at least back in the day when I was still active, you know, I'd be sitting at Sewell's Point. That's where I went for 2 hours, sitting at the pharmacy just waiting. Um, you it's funny that you bring something like that up because there are these things that exist, like the lighting on the tennis courts and waiting forever for waiting forever at the pharmacy, that we do complain about. You're correct. We do complain about them, but it almost feels like sometimes none of us actually believe that any of these things can be fixed. If that makes any sense, where it's like I have the complaints, but I just somewhere in my head I've got it in my head where that these are permanent things. Like it's never going to get fixed. This is how it is. Suck it up. But that shouldn't be the mindset. That shouldn't be the thought process. These things are fixable, and it just takes someone to do it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Like these things are fixable, and I think that yes, we complain both as military spouses and as service members. We complain about a lot of things, and it seems like if something does get fixed, it's not in our time. So it's not going to be, our time being stationed there. It's not going to get fixed. So if we can push people a little bit harder, find that funding to be like, yes, this is exactly what this is to be used for. And I think standing up and taking that time, because we don't live on post, but I know that and there's a reason why we don't live on post. There's a lot of reasons why we don't, but one of those is it's limited on post. Like resources are limited. Yes, you have the PX or the BX, and you have, which is for those who are listening who aren't military, that is the giant, essentially a shopping center for
BX,
us. And then we have
MCX, NEX. We got
all of those.
Yeah.
And then you got the commissary as well, right? Or the grocery store. And then, as I said, there's tennis courts, there's basketball courts, there's bowling and theater. But trying to host a gathering or anything else like that becomes an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
And there's ways to improve these things, and I think that we just need somebody who's going to actually look at them and say, hey, let's improve the lives of our enlisted soldiers who are on these bases, who stay in the barracks, who stay on post, so that way they don't have to leave post, they don't have to go anywhere, because some of them don't even have vehicles. So
yeah. Okay, so getting more into the actual campaigning and election side of things.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, you're going to be running against Jennifer Kiggins, I don't have anything nice to say, so I'll say nothing. But you're going to be running against, other than, she was military. Thank you for your service,
Yeah.
Jen. But anyway, but before you get to face off against her, you're going to have to win the primary. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think you can do, or what are you planning on doing to stand out in the primaries so that you are the most enticing candidate amongst the Democrats that run?
Yeah, I've actually met two other candidates who are running, and I believe I've talked to them a little bit, but our chair of VA2 is who gave me some background, and I believe both of them are former Navy officers. If
Big advantage in a district like this.
It really is a big advantage. It's a huge advantage, and the thing I look at is trying to stand out from Navy officers is how do I bring in our enlisted who feel like their officer chain of command doesn't hear them, right? Because again, I'm part of the enlisted family, and I've seen it. My husband's an E8, getting ready to be an E9, so we've seen these things, and he's been in leadership positions. So, with that being said, standing out as being able to say, "Hey, I understand the largest population of our military. In every single branch, our enlisted is our largest population. So I understand them. I've heard them. I've talked to them. I can communicate with them a lot more than I don't have a degree, right? And that's not saying that that's anything against them. But if we're going to have policies written for the majority, we've seen what happens when we have officers write policy for the majority. It doesn't always work out the best way. Nothing against officers. We have friends that are officers, but also I can connect with our community who's outside the military. So our civilian population, because I work as a civilian. I am out here every single day working in the civilian population. I understand what is happening to them, and I also understand how these policies that Jen Kiggins is voting for are affecting them, because it's affecting my family. It's affecting almost it. This bill will impact every single family in this country, some way, some form, somehow. It's going to impact them, and it's not going to be in a good way. And so being able to connect those dots there, I think is going to be an advantage for me, because I understand having to get SNAP benefits. I understand having to take out payday loans to make payments, because the paycheck just didn't stretch far enough to make sure that, you know, the water, the electricity, and the rent was paid.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of reaching beyond the practical and more into the theoretical. One of the things I've been thinking about recently as I've gotten more involved in politics, and as my accounts have grown and grown and grown, that growth has only made me want to get more involved. I'm just like, okay, well, you know, if I have like 50,000 followers on Instagram, it almost feels like it would be more. It would almost feels like it would be immoral for me to not try to help push the right people into the right spot, if the best I can, right? To that end, I've been thinking about this election. I think this is an important election. Obviously, it's the one I'm most connected to, given that you'd be representing me. There's something to be said for people that run in a military military majority. Obviously, the majority of people here aren't military, but in a military district like this, where the military population is very heavy, there's something interesting about how do you go about campaigning in that environment, because you have a huge portion of the people that live here that are either military spouses or active military spouses or active military themselves or veterans, you know, some relation to the military. And yet, due to the very nature of them, a lot of people being military spouses or active military, this district might actually not be their home of record, and so they can't vote here. I only just recently, because like I just got out, I only just recently changed my home of record to here and, you know, registered to vote here for the upcoming gubernatorial election in 2025. How do you go about campaigning in an environment like that where it almost would feel like you don't know who to message to? If you spend too much of your time messaging to the military community, you might be wasting a lot of time messaging to people that can't even vote for you, because these active duty military people, most of them probably can't. Most of them probably have their home of record elsewhere.
Yeah. I think one, and it's a hard thing to do, right? Because everybody if you live in the district, you can register to vote, regardless of where your home of record is at. You can register to vote here, but many people don't, because they're like, hey, when we get out, we're going to move back here.
Yeah. Right? I don't mean necessarily you can't, but I'll just use myself as an example, and you can say like how you would message to a person like me, where the whole time I was in, I've been here for the last. I did a 6-year contract. The first 2 years I was in Great Lakes, Illinois, and then the last 4 years here. And that entire time, I was still voting in elections, but I was voting in Ohio elections the whole time. That's where my home record was. I was still registered to vote there. I was only voting in Ohio elections. Never even looked at the candidates in Virginia. Never thought of it. Yeah. I was like, I mean, in my head, it's like I'm here now, but I don't live here. You know, I'm just here now. That's what I'm talking about. How do you go about dealing with that environment as a person campaigning for office?
It's going to be difficult, but I think our number one thing is, regardless of if you're registered to vote here or not, if you know somebody who is, and so if we can touch you and get you on our side, right? If you are like, yep, I'm Team Nicholas. I can't vote for Nicholas, but I'm Team Nicholas. You can talk to the people you work with. You can talk to other people who are registered to work here, because we have a ton of DoD civilians here. We have a ton of, you stop at the coffee shop on your way in, and even if I've talked to you, but I haven't talked to the barista at the coffee shop yet, and you're like, hey, I'm Team Nicholas, you can let the barista know so I think our goal is to get the word out via as many people as possible. And regardless of who we touch, if we can touch, 15 people who go out and touch 5 people, that wave effect helps us. And so that's what we're aiming for. And it's difficult because we don't want to overspend on one thing, but we also want to make sure that we are touching regardless of who they are, because we still represent them, is being communicated to, saying, hey, I'm here, regardless of if you can vote for me or not, you're here. And so if I'm elected, I still represent you, and I'm still here fighting for you. And so we want to make sure that my goal is to touch every single person in this district. How? I don't know yet. That's still something we're trying to figure out, right? Like, how do we do that? Like, social media, yes. Interviews like this, most definitely, because we can touch people all the way across the country. And this campaign is national because we're grassroots. We're a grassroots campaign. We're not taking money from big corporations like Jen is. So we have to get out there. We have to touch as many people as we can. But here in the district, that's where we're going to spend our advertising money at.
All right, that's a good answer. So yeah, that you touched on something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, is the nature of what I do. I inhabit the whole debating Trump supporter space. But the very nature of that space is that my followers are going to be comprised of people from all over the country, sometimes even other countries. Although my analytics, it does look like my following is like 98% America, so that's good. I don't care. Having Canadians follow me doesn't do me a whole lot of good if I'm trying to influence American politics. But
yeah.
As elections start coming up again, my big focus, my reason for actually was it 2-3 days ago, this weekend, I went to the DMV and changed my home of record and registered to vote in anticipation for the 2025 governor election, because Youngkin is the worst.
Oh yes.
Yes, he's got to go. Spanberger all the way. That being said, the very nature of what I do, like I said, is national. A lot of my followers are from California, New York, whatever. Which sucks for me as someone, like I said, I want to, use the influence I do have to help where I can. I'm trying to push for that locality. I've been trying all the things. I've been tagging my videos. When I've been posting videos, I've been putting the Virginia Beach tag on there, hoping more Virginia Beach people will see it, so I can help.
Yeah,
and maybe more. Some people from the area will see you. See clips from this interview. That being said, as much as I want to focus on the local aspect, and we've been mostly talking about Virginia related things, whilst you are going to be representing Virginia if you win this election, you're going to be voting on national things that have national implications. And right now, I see nothing bigger and more important than dealing with the Trump administration. What would you want to do? What do you plan to do to fight back against an administration that, without having better wording for it, is just evil, pure evil?
No,
what do you want to do? What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So the hopeful side of me, I'm an optimistic. I always look at the brighter side of things and hope for the best outcome. And that's that we flip the House and the Senate to 2/3. Because if we take 2/3 majority in the House and the Senate, and I know it is a giant stretch. I really do. I know
Senate especially.
Yes. But if we can flip those 2/3, we don't need the White House. Everything that we do, we can get passed with. It can get sent, vetoed, and come back to us. And as long as we have 2/3 of the vote, we are sailing on, because they can't do anything. So that is the optimistic portion of me, is saying, hey, with everything that they have done, hopefully there are enough people in this country whose minds have changed, Again, being optimistic that we can do this. The realistic side of me is saying if we can get in there and we can take a majority, which is what we need. We need a majority of the House and the Senate. Right now, we have a very minor majority for Republicans have a minor majority in each of those. If we can take the majority back, the simple majority, then we can do a lot of good by stopping any more damage that can take place. We can stop it. The issue becomes, again, we need 2/3 in the Senate. Even if the House impeached Trump, we need 2/3 in the
conviction's
Senate.
not going to happen.
Yeah, because we don't have 2/3 in the Senate.
Yeah.
As much as some of those Republicans have stepped out of bounds of the administration and said, "Hey, we don't support this."
Not that far. No one stepped out that far yet.
And exactly,
I don't see it
they
happening.
have not. They're not going to. And so we can throw as many impeachments as we want at Trump, but if we don't have 2/3 in the Senate, it's not going to happen. So our best bet is one, hopefully taking the 2/3, but also the realistic side is that we're going to take the majority back and we're going to stop all of the craziness that's happening in whatever way we can. So if it's, I hate to say it, but hiding things in bills, because we know Republicans don't read their bills. Hiding things in bills.
You see MTG say that she didn't read that with the AI legislation provision. She's like, "Oh my God, I didn't see this." You didn't see it, huh? Really?
Yeah, because they didn't read it.
Yeah,
they didn't read it. Their clerks didn't read it. Their aides didn't read it. So we know that they don't read the bills. Right. So if we can slip things in there, one, to refund Medicaid, refund SNAP, refund Social Security. Actually, look, and I think it could be a good thing. And this is something that could work, but it was done all wrong. And that's the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. I agree. We shouldn't, we should find a way to lower the taxes for the American people, but in a way that, one, we're raising the taxes for the wealthy, because they need to pay much more than what they're already paying. But the people who get overtime pay, who get the tips, those are our lower income families. It shouldn't be taxed at all. Right now, this bill, it still taxes them. It still comes out of the paycheck. So the paycheck's not getting any bigger. And then when they go file their taxes, it has to be itemized. Yeah. So now you have to do an itemization, which is not the free taxes.
Most people don't. Most people just go for the standard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the standard deduction, the free tax form, because that's what they can afford.
Yeah.
Back when we were, 10 years or so ago, I feel old at this point, but we were doing the free ones too, right? And so that's where this stands. Is I think the idea was good, the implementation was absolutely horrible. Right. It was absolutely horrible because it was, hey, we can hook the Republicans with this, or our Republican base with this, but we don't actually have to do this for them.
Yeah.
In so many words.
One of the things that people I've been trying to explain to people, and I feel like a lot of Republicans just aren't seeing this side of things. If it is the case that the no tax on tips or no tax on overtime is going to be such a large sum of money to you, because it's all relative, right? If that's going to be very helpful to you, then that means you're in an income bracket such that the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP will probably reverse the positive effects that you see. If you're in those lower income brackets to where no tax on overtime is so awesome for you, you're like, wow, that's going to be a lot of extra for me. Well, that means it's very likely that those SNAP and Medicaid cuts are going to affect you as well, in such a to such a degree that it'll at best it'll neutralize the benefit you're seeing from the tax cuts, and at worst it's going to be a net negative for you anyway. But people just see it's buzzwords politics. You know, people just no tax on tips, awesome. Like, but you're not seeing the rest of the effects that are going to hit you in the face. You know, when you go to file, you know, you may have gotten a little bit of you might get a nice write off from your taxes, or on your tips, on you know, come tax season. But what, you lost your health insurance. So did it really help you so much? No.
Yeah, that you know, they put a cap on it, right? So if you make too much overtime, you can't write off all of your overtime. If you make too many tips, you can't write off all of your tips. So there's that as well. And I don't think it's not fair. And then you have people who are going to end up entering a tax bracket beyond what the bill allows just because they're making so much overtime and they're not going to be able to claim that tax break anymore.
Yeah.
So, or that full tax break. So, I mean, if you can stay under it, you know, by $5, you're safe, you know, but that moment you go over that, that threshold, you're not going to be able to claim those no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. So unfortunately for that, it's going to negatively impact people. And it's going to take them to actually see the negative impact on their tax return to be able to actually realize, like, hey, this wasn't a great idea. And we'll see the Republican, you know, voter come out again on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, like many have already. I stitched one video from somebody on TikTok, but coming out and saying this bill was a zero. You're right. This bill was an absolute zero. It's always been a zero. That's why we've been trying to tell you that this is not good for you. This is not good for the American people, unless, of course, you're in the top 1% or you're buddies with Donald Trump, which if you're buddies with Donald Trump, you're probably in that top 1%.
Right. Well, I want to say thank you for coming on and doing this interview. We're wrapping up at the end of the time here. I'm going to throw for those watching the video later on, I will throw all the links to his website and the link to his donation pages down below in the description. Donate to his campaign. Go over to his website, look at his policy positions on everything. Again, just thank you for coming out. And if you end up, you know, maybe we can do this again a little bit closer to the election, doing a, you know, catch up, see where we're at, or closer to the primaries would probably be a better idea, because that's going to be your first challenge, your first test.
Yes.
And, you know, I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and if you're still here at the end, you must have either really liked the content or you are a very dedicated hate watcher. Either way, please like, comment, and subscribe to appease the algorithm overlords. And I'd like to give a super special thank you to my YouTube channel members and TikTok and Twitch subscribers right over here. If you'd like to become a channel member, you can click the join button down below and gain access to a special role in my Discord server, the ability to watch these YouTube videos up to a week early, and have your name shouted out at the end of videos like this. Becoming a YouTube member or subscribing on TikTok or Twitch is the best possible way to support me directly, and I deeply appreciate each and every single one of you that chooses to do so. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your day.